I've spent the last 2 years working on Merek's Market, a game about running a medieval shop, and I thought it might be fun to do a deep dive on the development of the haggling mechanic and how that mechanic changed over the course of development. We'll be looking at it from more of a game design perspective, so don't worry too much about this getting technical. If we look at the haggling from a high level, it should be engaging to chat to a customer. There should be an element of reading the customer's behaviour, either what they've said or what they're wearing before you pick a price. And it will be fun to get strong responses back too. Maybe think of a shouting customer if you try to overcharge them. If we convert this into some sort of game flow, we'd get firstly a customer coming into the shop and requesting an item, either by directly asking for it or talking some silly mumbo jumbo around that topic, and we pick out what they want. You then decide what item to pick for them and tell them the price that you want for it. The customer can accept your price or counter offer. The longer a negotiation keeps going, the more upset a customer gets, and they'll eventually storm out. And once you agree on a price, the customer hands over the money and everyone's happy. Little disclaimer time, these videos are development footage, so you may see things which offend your eyeballs. We started with this basic but clunky setup. There's a log of what the customer said on the left hand side, a menu for picking out different items, and a slider to set the price. It works and it's a good start, but there's so much information on screen at once it's hard to tell what you should be looking at. There's also a lot of clicks to get through and menus to open up, and on the whole I think we can do better. We can target some nicer camera work, frame Merek and the customer better. A static camera shot of a customer is quite drab. Maybe we could lead the player through the negotiation flow a little bit nicer, focus on what's happening at the minute and make it more obvious what they should be doing next. And this setup at the moment is obviously PC only. There's far too many menus, far too many things to click on, so maybe we should look at trying to make it controller friendly. With version 2, straight away you can notice a difference, with the dialogue displayed as speech bubbles at the top of the screen. A lot of the UI that's not needed when chatting has been stripped away, leaving just the elements that we want the player to focus on. Something we deliberated on was only showing the current spoken dialogue and not everything that the customer has ever said, and I think it's the right choice to keep the UI clean and the gameplay focused. We've also pulled out the camera to frame Merek and the customer. This gives a little more context to what's happening, letting the user know that we're in the haggling stage. Selecting an item for the customer is now automatically brought up as part of the flow. It's highlighted by removing the other UI elements and shown in a simple layout that's easily navigated with a controller. The final big change here was to remove the ability to explicitly set a cash price and instead choose from a number of predetermined options. It's another step towards simplification and gives a player an impression of what's a cheap price on the left and an expensive price on the right. As a PC UI, it's also using the width of the screen much better. There's now another screen for once the customer comes back to you with a counter offer, you're given the opportunity to accept it or reject it. And here everything's nicely laid out with your offer and the customer's offers shown quite clearly. So that's a lot of improvements. We've made a nice multi-stage flow to shepherd the player through our haggling, but there's still a lot that we can improve on. We can see Merek and the customer, but it's still quite static and underwhelming. It's also hard to tell who's talking. A name and an arrow in the bubble aren't the most revealing. In our item selection, at the moment they're just floating bits of UI. I'm wondering if we can improve this as well. At the minute the player has to think about price and separately profit. We could probably keep it simple by combining these two figures. Even though we've just added the offer confirmation screen, it is quite slow to decide whether you want to accept or reject after each round of negotiation. It takes the player out of the action. Before we look at the next round of improvements, I've fished out this video from the archives and it's a mock-up our artist put together. The cuts between the customer and Merek are great to show who's currently negotiating, and it's definitely something we're going to put into version 3. A aside from the lighting looking as if it was powered by just a single candle, we made a lot of improvements here. When someone is talking, there's a nice live image of their face on the UI. This is a bit of a trick. There's a copy of the customer floating out in space somewhere with nice lighting on the face and a camera to capture it. And this gets rendered onto render texture and used here. Anyway, the next section is a little work in progress. The item should be on the shelves in the background, but it's nice to show the camera moving it in and also how it will look when it all ties into the environment nicely. The UI on the whole is starting to look in keeping with the theme of the game. This coin in particular is nicely contextual. It implies you're setting a price without having to put a label on it that says price. We've also combined the multiple numbers for price and profit into just one easily understandable value. Continuing relentlessly, trying to strip out and streamline everything we can, the offer confirm screen has been merged into price selection. That means there's no explicit additional step for you to accept or deny a price. It's just combined with that negotiation screen. Nice. This is a huge leap since last time, but as development went on, we kept seeing rough edges to smooth over and more things we thought we could improve on. It can feel a little odd to charge a customer 1,000 crowns for a pencil and they keep a straight face showing no emotions. Merek also stood staring into space, doesn't feel great. He's not the expert salesman you expect him to be. So we can focus on this and see if any animations can improve things. When we cut to the customer, it shows the shot from an angle that we never really intended. We might have to think of a way around that. At this point I got distracted and started to play with a little animation of Merek lifting an item onto the counter to show what they're haggling over. Anyway, on to version 4. Ooh, how shiny. When haggling, Merek now has a set of conversation animations that give a little bit of polish and energy to the negotiation. The customer picks an anim based on how upset they are at the ludicrous prices. The customer's animations at this point are just a free asset until the artist can build our own set. The elephant in the room, the beautiful environment. We chose to create a custom environment that is loaded in just for haggling. This meant we could optimize it to look great from the angles we know are going to be used. And at this point in development, we were creating different shops for Merek to own. So using the same haggling environment cuts the design complexity when building the new shops. We aren't restricted by having to include the same haggling elements in all the different environments and shops that we create. The haggling mechanic is starting to look really good and close to what we want. Our main remaining problem was showing the mood of the customer. Having an emoji to represent the mood of the customer feels like a missed opportunity, so let's see what we can do there. We've now got some custom facial animations for the live image. This tidies up the UI, but is also much more visually pleasing. The style of the UI has also been overhauled one last time. Once our designs had stabilised, we got in a specialist UI artist to spruce up the haggling flow. And you can't see it here, but there's also a heap of quality of life improvements behind the scenes, like the ability to fast forward or skip lines of dialogue. A huge feature that I really wanted was voice acting.
Why do you keep doing this, Merek? That's way too high.
You'd be surprised what something...
It's not something that many indie games have, but a chatting and haggling mechanic benefits hugely from this. We sourced some great actors for the main and recurring customers and had about 20 voice actors who worked on the game in total. There's a lot of voice acting talent on Fiverr and it doesn't have to break the bank. Voice recording really helps bring this feature and the game as a whole to life. And that's how we reached the final result. There's no way we'd have been able to jump to version 5 on the first try. It took a lot of trial and error to find out what worked, what didn't, what areas we needed to improve on. This video has been a bit of a departure from the norm for this channel, so if you want more videos like this, then let me know in the comments. And if you'd like to support the making of more videos, then please consider buying Merek's Market, which at this point is out on every console. See you next time!